"Why are you looking?" she asked. Her body spoke louder than words. The air on Zelphoria carried an earthy sweetness that Elian Novak had never encountered on any of the 17 planets he'd mapped before. He adjusted his atmospheric filter, allowing himself to taste more of it as he wandered through the winding pathways of the hidden market. His expedition team had set up base camp 10 kilometers north, but Elian had ventured out alone, drawn by rumors of uncharted territories. The marketplace twisted through ancient stone formations, canopies of iridescent fabric filtering the purple sunlight into dancing patterns. Merchants called out in a dozen languages, translation devices working over time as they beckoned to the few off-worlders brave enough to venture this far from established trade. Routes. Elian paused at a stall displaying navigational instruments when he felt it, a subtle pull, like gravity shifting slightly beneath his feet. He turned, following the sensation until he stood before a small shop nestled between two towering rock pillars. Unlike the other brightly colored stalls, this one was understated, illuminated only by soft blue lights that seemed to float without source. Inside, shelves held objects unlike any he'd seen before. Crystalline structures that changed color as he looked at them, metal artifacts that appeared to breathe, and vessels containing swirling mists that formed patterns when approached. "They hold memories, not spices or trinkets," came a melodious voice from the shadows. Terrace stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful. Her skin had a subtle blue luminescence, contrasting with her amber eyes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Her form was similar enough to human to be familiar, yet different in ways that made Elian acutely aware of how far he was from Earth. "Memories?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly hoarse. She nodded, picking up one of the crystal formations. "This contains the experience of witnessing the birth of twin moons over the sapphire sea." She placed it in his hands, her fingers brushing against his. The crystal warmed instantly, and Elian gasped as images flooded his mind. Two celestial bodies rising from turquoise waters, their light casting prismatic reflections across endless waves. When the vision faded, he found Terrace watching him intently. "How is this possible?" "My people have always been collectors," she said with a slight smile that revealed nothing. "What memories would you trade, traveler?" "I'm just a cartographer," Elian replied. "I map stars and landscapes, nothing special." Terrace tilted her head, studying him. "Every perspective is unique. Your sky is not my sky, though we stand beneath the same stars." For reasons he couldn't explain, Elian found himself returning her gaze longer than propriety would dictate, noticing how her features shifted subtly with her expressions. Something about her presence made the vast distances he'd traveled seem suddenly meaningful. "I should go," he said finally, though he made no move to leave. "Yet you linger," Terrace observed quietly. "Perhaps you seek something not found on any map." 3 local days passed before Elian returned to the hidden market. He told himself it was professional curiosity. Memory-capturing technology could revolutionize cartography. But even as he formulated this excuse, he knew it wasn't maps that drew him back to Terrace's shop. The market buzzed with midday activity, but her shop remained an island of calm. This time he found Terrace arranging new artifacts on a circular table. She didn't look up as he entered, but a subtle smile formed on her lips. "The cartographer returns," she said, still focused on her work. "Did you chart a path directly to my door?" "Your memory crystals intrigued me," Elian replied, moving closer. "I've been thinking about them." "About them," Terrace repeated, finally meeting his gaze. "Not about who collected them?" Heat rose to Elian's face. In the soft blue light of the shop, her amber eyes seemed to shimmer with amusement. She wore a different garment today, a draping outfit that accentuated the graceful curve of her form as she moved among her treasures. "Perhaps both," he admitted. Over the next hours, Terrace showed him more memories. A desert storm where sand particles froze midair during a magnetic anomaly. The migration of luminous creatures across a frozen tundra. The underwater ceremony of her people's coming-of-age ritual. With each shared vision, the space between them seemed to shrink. They spoke little. Instead, communication flowed through other channels. The brush of fingers when exchanging artifacts, lingering glances across the room, the subtle shifts in proximity as they moved through the narrow spaces between shelves. When a customer entered, Elian retreated to a corner, watching Terrace in her element. Her gestures became more pronounced for the benefit of the newcomer, a merchant from a neighboring system. Elian noted how different her interactions were with the merchant, compared to their own wordless dialogue. After the customer departed, Taris approached where Elian stood examining a small copper-colored sphere. "That one is special," she said, standing close enough that he could sense the warmth radiating from her. "It contains a memory of the first time someone realized they were falling in love." Elian looked up, finding her gaze already waiting for his. "Whose memory is it? Does it matter?" Taris asked softly. "Some experiences are universal, transcending species and worlds." As the market sounds faded with approaching evening, Elian realized hours had passed. His team would be concerned, yet he couldn't bring himself to leave. Something unspoken hung between them, fragile and potent. "Tomorrow?" he asked simply as he finally prepared to depart. Taris nodded, her fingers briefly intertwining with his in a gesture that felt more intimate than any embrace. "I'll show you memories not meant for customers," she whispered. "Come after the second moonrise." Walking back to camp under Zelforia's swirling nebula-streaked sky, Elian realized that for the first time in his career, he was more focused on what lay behind him than what waited to be discovered ahead. Elian arrived at Taris's shop well after the second moonrise. The market stood eerily quiet, most vendors having retired for the night. Only a few ambient lights illuminated his path as he navigated toward the now familiar blue glow between the rock pillars. He found the shop's entrance draped with an opaque curtain. Hesitating briefly, he pushed it aside to discover the interior transformed. The shelves had been rearranged to create an open space in the center where cushions surrounded a low table. Suspended above, memory crystals of various sizes created a miniature cosmos of soft light. Taris emerged from a back room carrying an ornate wooden box. She had adorned her face with luminescent markings that traced the contours of her features, making her appear both ethereal and intensely present. "You came," she said, though her tone suggested she had never doubted. "I couldn't stay away," Elian admitted. She gestured to the cushions. "Sit. What I'm about to show you few off-worlders have seen." The box she placed between them was carved with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. From it, she removed a memory vessel unlike the others, a liquid-filled sphere containing what appeared to be a miniature nebula. "This contains memories of Nalthari, my ancestral home," Taris explained, her voice taking on a reverential quality. "It was destroyed 3 centuries ago when its sun collapsed. When she placed it in his hands, the experience overwhelmed his senses. Unlike previous memories that felt like witnessed events, this was immersive. He could feel cool winds carrying sweet scents, hear melodic languages, and see sprawling cities built within living trees that reached toward 3 moons. When he emerged from the vision, he found Taris watching him with vulnerability he hadn't seen before. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes, catching light and refracting it. "You're the last of them," Elian whispered in realization. She nodded. "The last who remembers. Others survived, but they were infants raised on distant worlds." Without thinking, Elian reached for her, his fingers gently wiping away a tear. The contact sent a current through him and Taris caught his hand, pressing it against her cheek. "I've shown you my world," she murmured. "Would you show me yours?" The question carried weight beyond words. Elian understood she wasn't asking for Earth memories, but something more personal. As answer, he leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory. The meeting of 2 beings separated by light years of evolution, yet drawn together by something older than either of their species. Her lips were warmer than he expected, slightly sweet like the Zelforian air. As they drew apart, the memory crystals above pulsed in rhythm with their accelerated heartbeats. Taris rose gracefully, extending her hand. She led him deeper into the shop, past curtained alcoves to her private quarters where artifacts of personal significance surrounded a simple sleeping area. "Are you certain?" Elian asked, though his body had already decided. Taris responded by unfastening her garments, revealing the subtle luminescence that ran like constellations across her skin. "Some memories," she whispered against his ear, "are worth creating rather than preserving." Their bodies met like distant worlds finally finding orbit around each other, different yet complementary, each movement a discovery, each touch a mapping of uncharted territory. Novak, You've marked these coordinates incorrectly again. Commander Reyes's voice cut through the expedition team's morning briefing with barely contained irritation. That's the third error this week. Elian glanced down at his tablet, seeing the mistake immediately. The numbers he'd entered were coordinates for Terrace's shop, not the geological formation he'd been assigned to document. He quickly corrected the data, avoiding the questioning looks from his colleagues. Sorry. Won't happen again, he muttered, though all of them knew it likely would. For the past 2 weeks, Elian had lived in two worlds. By day, he performed his cartographer duties mechanically, his mind elsewhere. By night, he slipped away to the hidden market where Terrace waited with new memories to share and create. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Dr. Keller, the expedition's xenobiologist, fell in step beside him. You disappear every night, she said without preamble. The commander is starting to ask questions. Elian maintained his focus on the path ahead. I'm just exploring local culture. Is that what we're calling it? Keller's tone softened. Look, I've seen how Zelforian biology affects human biochemistry. Whatever connection you think you're forming. It's not like that, Elian interrupted, though he couldn't articulate what it was like. How Terrace's touch seemed to transfer emotions directly through his skin. How their nights together left traces of her luminescence temporarily imprinted on his body. How he'd begun dreaming in colors that didn't exist on Earth. The expedition ends in 16 days, Keller reminded him. Then we're gone, back to the core systems. Just be careful about what you're leaving behind, or taking with you. That night, Elian found Terrace unusually quiet as they sat among her memory vessels. She had been teaching him the ancient art of her people, how to imprint experiences into crystalline structures. His attempts were crude but improving. Members of my collective visited today, she finally said, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm. They sensed your presence here, your lingering energy. Elian felt a chill despite the warmth of her shop. Is that a problem? My people believe memories should remain pure, she explained. Connections between species create complicated imprints. They reminded me of my duty as a memory keeper. And what is that duty? Elian asked, already sensing the answer. Terrace's amber eyes seemed dimmer than usual. To preserve, not to create. To remain objective, untangled from the experiences I collect. The meaning hung between them. Whatever they had started would soon face barriers beyond just physical distance. The human expedition leaves soon, she continued. Her voice steady despite the emotion Elian could feel radiating from her skin. Perhaps it's best if... He silenced her with a kiss that carried all the arguments he couldn't voice. When they finally separated, Terrace's luminescent markings glowed brighter, pulsing with her quickened heartbeat. I want to give you something, she whispered, rising to retrieve an empty memory vessel, a small pendant on a chain. Tonight we will create a memory for you alone to carry. Their lovemaking that night was different, deliberate, almost ceremonial. As their bodies entwined, Terrace pressed the pendant between them, whispering words in her native tongue. The crystal warmed, absorbing the essence of their connection. Later, as Elian prepared to return to camp before dawn, Terrace fastened the pendant around his neck. A piece of us, she said simply. When activated, it will recall not just images or sounds, but everything we felt. Elian clutched it tightly, knowing that 16 days from now, memories might be all either of them had left. The expedition's final days on Zelforia raced by with cruel efficiency. Elian performed his duties with renewed attention, hoping to avoid any reason for the team to depart early. Each night he returned to Terrace, their time together growing increasingly precious. On the second to last night, he arrived at her shop to find something unexpected. Several elder members of her collective, their skin bearing elaborate luminescent patterns that marked their status. They regarded Elian with unreadable expressions as Terrace emerged from behind them. They wished to understand, she explained, her voice formal in their presence. The oldest among them, a being whose luminescence had faded to pale blue with age, approached Elian. Without warning, the elder placed 3 fingertips against his forehead. Images cascaded through Elian's mind. The history of memory keepers, their sacred duty spanning millennia. The delicate balance of preserving without interference. He understood suddenly the weight Terrace carried as perhaps the last true keeper of her world's complete legacy. When the connection broke, Elian stumbled backward, steadying himself against a shelf. What did you show him? Terrace asked the elder. Truth, came the reply in heavily accented standard language. Now we must see his. Before Elian could object, the elder reached for the pendant around his neck. The moment contact was made, the crystal activated, projecting not just the intimate moments between Elian and Terrace, but the profound emotional landscape they had created together. The collective watched in silence as the memory played out. When it finished, the elder turned to Terrace with an expression that even Elian could recognize as surprise. "This is not mere physical entanglement," the elder said. "It is Shanvora." Terrace's eyes widened. "That's not possible between species." "Yet it exists," the elder replied. "The memories do not lie." After a lengthy discussion in their native language, too complex for Elian's translator to fully capture, the collective departed, leaving them alone. "What is Shanvora?" Elian asked once they were gone. Terrace seemed transformed, her luminescence brighter than he'd ever seen. "A soul memory connection? Rare even among my people. It means our experiences have become intertwined beyond physical proximity. Distance cannot sever it." Hope surged through Elian. "Then when I leave, we remain connected," she confirmed. "But it means more. It means I am permitted to travel, to collect new memories beyond Zelphoria." Understanding dawned slowly. "You could come with me?" "Not immediately," Terrace cautioned. "I have responsibilities to transfer, knowledge to pass on. But yes, eventually. The collective now sees my connection to you as an evolution of our tradition, not a violation." On their final night together, they sat among her memory vessels, planning a future neither had imagined possible weeks earlier. Terrace would join him within 6 standard months, after training another keeper. As dawn approached, Elian held her close, memorizing the feeling of her in his arms. "How will I know you're still there during our separation?" he asked. Terrace placed her hand over the memory pendant. "Each night activate this. I will do the same with its twin. Our memories will continue to form a shared collection, even across the stars." When Elian reluctantly returned to the expedition ship that morning, his colleagues noticed something different. A subtle luminescence visible at his temples and fingertips when the lights dimmed. Commander Reyes eyed him suspiciously during the departure sequence. "Bringing back any unauthorized specimens, Novak?" Elian smiled, his hand resting on the pendant beneath his uniform. "Just memories, Commander. Just memories." As the ship broke Zelphoria's atmosphere, Elian felt a warm pulse from the crystal, Taurus watching the same sky, sending her presence across the distance. Some languages, he now understood, required no translation, no words, no physical proximity. They spoke directly from one heart to another, transcending the boundaries of worlds and species, creating connections that even the vast emptiness of space could not diminish. In the privacy of his quarters that night, Elian activated the pendant and felt Terrace there with him, their memories flowing together like twin stars orbiting a common center, separate yet eternally bound.